Hello, thank you for watching. Since Donald Trump came in power, there has been a lot of talking of how much money Ukraine had received from the United States. No one seems to know the real number. President Trump keeps talking about the phantasmagorical $350 billion. We present you a fragment of the interview with Andrey Illarionov, a Russian economist and former senior policy advisor to the President of Russia from April 2000 to December 2005. Since April 2021, he is a senior fellow at the Non-Governmental Organizations Center for Security Policy, which is based out of Washington, D.C. in the United States. He has become a vocal critic of Putin and his administration since 2003, while he was still a Putin's advisor. In April 2022, Illarionov declared in a news interview that change in the Kremlin would happen sooner or later, given that it is absolutely impossible to have any positive future for Russia with the current political regime. In this interview, Mr. Illarionov unveils the mystery of the size of the US military assistance to Ukraine. If you find this fragment of the interview interesting, by your request in the comments we can translate his most recent and more detailed interview. Almost 2 hours of numbers and facts he dug out from the official US sources. Please like or dislike, subscribe and share if you think it is worth sharing. Thank you for watching. Let me repeat it again. The numbers that President Zelensky said in the interview to Associated Press are not right, because Ukraine did not get military equipment of the amount of $177 billion, and the assistance that was actually approved by the Congress of the United States is not $177 or $178 billion, it's $33 billion more. So, in fact, if we are talking about the decisions of the Congress, then we need to be talking about the amount of $210 billion as of today. And today is February 4. Almost for 3 years, the Congress of the US, under the title Assistance to Ukraine, approved funding of different programs and projects of the amount of $210 billion, ballparking, so to speak, 210. From this amount, $210 billion, $177 billion is the decision as a part of 5 laws to fund from the budget of the United States. There were 2 laws in 2022, 2 laws in 2023, and 1 law in 2024. When we sum up all the spending that was planned according to these 5 laws, the amount we get is $177 billion. At the same time, it's very important to remember, and please pay close attention, everybody who is viewing us, this $177 billion, we say it's the budget of 2022, 2023, and 2024. This amount is supposed to be used over 10 years from the moment this money is approved. In other words, the budget of 2022 goes in such a way that the funding that is called assistance to Ukraine, this money should be spent from the period of 2022 to 2031 year. So, in other words, it is not necessarily used as part of the one fiscal year. See, Ludmila, it's not the first news that you're not aware of, and I think that our colleagues in Ukrainian government and Ukrainian parliament, rather, they're not aware of either. So, the budget of 2023 implies that this spending is supposed to be done from 2023 to 2032. The budget of 2024, those projects that are in that budget, this money should be spent over 10 years from 2024 to 2033. Okay, then the question, Andrei, does it mean that the money that are on the balance at the end of the fiscal year, they automatically transfer to the next year, and you don't need any approval from the Congress. See, there are different programs, and according to different programs, they have different terms. There are programs where when this money is supposed to be spent by the end of a fiscal year, by September 30th of a particular year, and so on and so forth. But there are programs as part of the same law, according to which the administration of the president can use this money for a longer time. So that's why $177 billion, this is all the projects, all programs that are funded directly from the budget of the United States. This is where they give them the money. So with this long term, 10 years, we put here the programs when they place orders with American manufacturing facilities to produce military equipment, ammunition, and so on for Ukraine. So these programs, let's say they're calculated for 10 years, and US budget adds to these laws a table showing how the money in these programs are spread across the years. For example, for the budget of 2022, they show how much you're supposed to spend in 22, in 23, in 24, and in 25, up to 31. The same story for the next year, and the same story is for 2024 budget. And the economic assistance, the budgetary assistance, is supposed to be spent as part of the fiscal year. In other words, till September 30th. This is the main picture about this $177 billion. And what about the difference between $210 billion, the total amount that I spoke about at the beginning, and this amount of $177 billion? This is the total value of the cap of military shipments through PDA channel, Presidential Drawdown Authorities. And this is the channel that we look at closely, because this is the channel they use to provide the main assistance to Ukraine. And to be precise, this is $33.5 billion. This is aggregate amounts of military assistance through PDA channel in 22, in 23, and in 24 financial year. For 3 years, in other words, Ukraine got military assistance, weapons, of the amount of $33 billion. No, for 3 years, the Congress gave permission to the Biden administration to ship military equipment to Ukraine of the amount of $33 billion. It's not that Ukraine received it, but the Congress gave permission to the Biden administration to do it. So, and now when we said that, we can finalize the first half of our conversation. What the Congress did, they gave Biden's administration a permission to ship military assistance to Ukraine that goes under the assistance to Ukraine of the amount of $210 billion. It's $177 billion from budget and $33.5 billion from PDA channel. It's not budget, this is like physical volumes of the weapons that are in the storage, in the stock. Now, if we look at $177 billion and see how much it is there for Ukraine, it's about $65 billion for 3 years. This is the assistance that has to do with Ukraine. This is both military and budgetary and all other, and out of this 177 billion, right? Yes, the difference between 177 billion dollars and $65 billion, this is the spending of the United States that has nothing to do with Ukraine. So in other words, then it's $112 billion, right? Yes, $112 billion have nothing to do with Ukraine from the very start, according to the laws of the United States. This, first of all, the spending on developing the bases of the United States, then deployment of the US military in Europe, and then also supporting other countries, and some countries that have nothing to do with Ukraine at all. They kind of launched it under the title Ukraine. For example, in one of the first bills that were passing, there were money that were allocated to reconstruction and equipment US Embassy in Kiev. So formally it has to do something with Ukraine. It is on the territory of Ukraine in Kiev, but this money has nothing to do with Ukraine. This is spending from the budget of the United States on the United States purposes. That's why it's not $112 billion. It's not the $100 billion that Zelensky was talking about. So we knew about it from the very first day, and this number changed because in 2022 it was one amount, and in 2023 it grew, and in 2024 it grew up to $112 billion. So everything is broken down pretty precisely how the money is spent. This money is spent from the budget of the United States, and they spend it on the United States. That's why for the Ukrainian president, they had to know that both in the presidential administration of Ukraine, in the parliament, among the officials, they could do it and explain that this $112 billion, according to the laws of the United States under the title Ukraine, they use this money for the United States, partly in the United States territory, sometimes in Europe, and sometimes in the territory of Ukraine, like when they spend it on the US Embassy in Kiev. So it's not a secret when you announce and say that we don't know where the money went. It's just ridiculous, because you just could say that this is the money that was spent for the United States, on the United States. And just look at how this money, correctly or incorrectly, precisely or rightly, whatever, corruptionally or not, how this money is used by the American government for the American purposes. Ukraine has nothing to do with it from the very beginning, from the very day of the approval of the Congress of the United States. So, and now, the next part. I don't remember exactly, but about $65 billion. This amount has two parts in it, almost half and half, $33 billion in each part. One part, this is financing orders to produce weapons for Ukraine, military equipment and ammunition. Yes, this is the long term, those 10 years. Yes, this is long-term spending, yes, I spoke about. And the same amount, this is financing the budget of Ukraine, supporting the budget of Ukraine. And now, when we made it clear pretty much, I hope so though, what the Congress decided, what resources they provided to the Biden administration to assist Ukraine. And now there is several stages to go through. In English it's called appropriation, in other words, assigning the funds. And then these funds are transferred to the accounts of the presidential administration. And then when the administration gets that, then Pentagon gets the money, then other agencies, and they make their decisions. Sometimes they immediately transfer it to Ukraine right away. It happens rarely, but sometimes they transfer the monies through several stages, and sometimes they don't even do it. They make such a decision, and as part of the budgetary process, it's called commitment. And when we translate commitment, it means taking an obligation. On the Congress side, at the beginning, it's appropriation, so they assign the money, and then the administration makes a decision. It is a commitment. They make a commitment. And now I am, as executive branch of power, I am committing to spend this money, but this is just a commitment, it's not spending yet. And oftentimes, almost always, I can say, Ukrainian officials, non-Ukrainian officials, American officials, experts, They use numbers from commitment as if it's assistance that was already delivered to Ukraine. And the biggest distortion, so to speak, here, this is when they mix up the data that has to do with appropriations that Congress assigned and Ukraine received, and the second one, when the administration made a commitment and it's different from what Ukraine actually received. There are different stages. There are 3 or even 4 sort of steps to go through. This first one is appropriation. This is what Congress assigned. Then the second stage is commitment. This is what the administration promised or took the obligation to provide. The third stage is shipment. And the fourth is delivery, when the recipient received the assistance. 4 stages. And every time when there is a number, you have to have an idea what they're talking about. It's about appropriations, about commitments, about shipments, or about delivery. Not to torture our viewers, we spoke a little bit about appropriations, we touched on commitments. We'll skip shipments and we'll get to the delivery. Oh no, wait a second. So actually, yes, we'll start with shipment. So what was actually shipped by the administration to Ukraine? And now I'm giving you the numbers. So wait a second, we're going back to PDA or we're not taking PDA? No, we're talking about the whole thing. We'll return to PDA later. We will. So, and here's another issue, and the issue that we've discussed with you and some other people touched on it, what prices to use to do accounting of these shipments, because it turned out that over these 3 years, the Pentagon, when they were sending military assistance to Ukraine, they were accounting this military assistance based on new purchase prices of the shipments. In other words, the prices that the Pentagon was supposed to be buying these goods as if they're buying these goods on the day of the shipment. But in fact, all military assistance that was provided, these are all old materials, old equipment, and this equipment was produced years ago or decades ago, and all these items, units, ammunition, they are to be accounted according to the accounting method of Pentagon, based on their balance value, of their remaining value, because over time there is depreciation, they become obsolete and physically worn out, and that's why they depreciate the value of these resources. That's why Pentagon and all other oversight agencies that are overseeing these activities, many times they noticed that during the shipments the prices are jacked up, and correspondingly they were overstating the volume of the assistance, accounting it based on new purchase prices. Over almost 3 years, there were several such announcements, and in general, this overstating was $8.5 billion, and we'll get back to it. And now, back to the numbers, what was shipped. What was shipped from the United States. This amount is $33.8 billion. $33.8 billion. Now we are talking about the military equipment and weapons. Yes, only military assistance, only. This is weapons, ammunitions, military equipment, and other military items. $33.8 billion. Naturally, accounting services of Pentagon, they determined that this amount is jacked up by $8.5 billion. And in fact, they didn't do accounting of everything. They only got to the fall of 2023, so even a whole year is left. So we didn't finish 2024, and we don't know what the conclusions will be. But I think their latest package of PDA was 33, and now by now they've done 70 or 72 packages of PDA. So 33 is actually half of it, and maybe a little less than half or a little more than in volumes. So what they calculated that this amount is overrated by $8.5 billion. So, and if we recalculate this military assistance according to the prices that Pentagon considers the right, not us, but Pentagon, they're experts, and they actually issued a particular report indicating to their colleagues who are sitting in the same building that they are miscalculating. So the miscalculation is $8.5 billion, and according to the accounting prices, all the military assistance that was provided through PDA channel is $25.3 billion. 25.3. So for 3 years. Yes, for 3 years. And now we need to say that through other channels, there are other two channels, this USAI and FMF. These two channels, through them, for the next 2 years, they provided military assistance of $1.6 billion. In such a way, in general, all shipments of military assistance of US to Ukraine is $26.9 billion. This is the number that Vladimir Zelensky was supposed to tell Associated Press. For 3 years, shipments of military assistance to Ukraine from the United States were about $27 billion. Not 75, not 76, not 70, about $27 billion. And here it's important to take into account that data for USAI and FMF of 2024, this data is not printed yet, so it's supposed to be published for the next few days or weeks, and as soon as they publish them, immediately we'll share this data with the public. So this number will change a little bit. How it will change, how much it will change, we can't tell. But we know that in 2022, the assistance was $1.4 billion or $1.450 billion, but in 2023 it was $80 million. So it can be several dozens of million dollars, maybe hundreds of $1 million, or maybe $1 billion or $2 billion, a little more, but it's not going to change drastically the number that we're talking about now. So we got to this number. It's a very important number, and this is the number that President Zelensky was supposed to say, and this number should be repeated by all the Ukrainian officials, non-officials, all experts, everybody who has anything to do with the military assistance, American military assistance to Ukraine for less than 3 years. All military assistance that the United States sent to Ukraine is about $27 billion. This is what is the real number. And here we need to add another important clarification. We said that this is the assistance that is shipped right away. Yes, right? Representatives of Pentagon many times they said that PDA assistance, this is the assistance that is shipped right away, sometimes within a few hours or within several days. And you know what? We actually believed it. It's terrifying to say, but I believed it myself. And during the first 2 years and a half, I kept repeating it, following what Pentagon representatives were saying. Actually, how they deceived us with this. What do you mean? In the summer of the last year, the audit division of Pentagon, they published a special report. And in this report, they provided a table. And in this table, you can see during what time military assistance was delivered to Ukraine through PDA channels. There were certain items there, armored vehicles, tanks, howitzers, and other items. Some of the items, again, from the shipment to delivery. Some of the items, it took 60 days. Some items, 90 days. Some 120 days. Some 150. Some of them, 330 days. The record was broken by the item over 400 days. So, even then, in my calculations, and I used it many times, so if the United States says that certain package of PDA is announced, then I thought that within a week or two, this assistance will be delivered to Ukraine. I didn't count the hours because I understood that it has nothing to do with the reality, but I thought that within 2 weeks this military assistance would be received in Ukraine. But the auditors from Pentagon, they explained that for some of the items, from the moment they're announced to the moment when they're delivered to Ukraine, the pause, the difference, the time is more than 400 days. So the amount of $27 billion, this is the amount of shipments, but not deliveries. This amount should be reduced by the shipments that were announced as part of PDA, but were not delivered to Ukraine yet. It should be reduced by this amount and increased by the amount of the shipments through USAI and FMF. And we don't know these numbers yet, so we need to keep in mind these two adjustments. But $27 billion in this case is the key number because it is officially confirmed by official publications and documents from Pentagon and officials. And you think that's it? No, it's not. It's just the beginning. Because now we not only can, but we must look at the comparison of the appropriated funds that the Congress assigned through the military channels and the assistance that actually was shipped to these channels to Ukraine. And now, if we are talking about PDA channel, the key channel of shipments of military assistance to Ukraine, let me remind you, the Congress set a cap of $33 billion for 3 years. But actual shipments, not delivered, but shipped, $25.3 billion. So thus we see the difference of $8.2 billion that the Congress gave to the Biden administration to ship military equipment, military items and weapons, and that Biden administration never did. $8.2 billion, it's exactly the 1/4 of what Congress assigned to Ukraine and what Biden administration didn't give to Ukraine. So that's why we can say this channel, the execution of Biden's administration of Congress decisions was 75%, 3/4. And now let's look at how the second half was used. The budgetary part of shipments of military assistance to Ukraine, approximately from the same $33 billion. Yes, right, those $33 billion of shipments. Yes, as of today. Since we don't have the date of 2024, this is $1.6 billion. This is 5%. We are talking about what was shipped. And for this amount, since it is in the reporting of 23 and 22, we can say that it was delivered to Ukraine. Thus, we can say that the appropriations that the Congress assigned for the Biden administration from the budget of the United States, Biden's administration executed this order of Congress only by 5%. PDA channel 75% execution, and USAI and FMF only 5%. And I think this, namely President Zelensky and his administration and the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Defense and all the deputies of Ukrainian Parliament Rada and all Ukrainian speakers who speak different languages who come to the United States and who participate in public events in the US, particularly during the Ukrainian week that began yesterday here in DC. They need to use these numbers, explaining to their American partners and colleagues what is the real situation with the military assistance from the United States to Ukraine. They had to say that the Congress assigned the funds under the title Ukraine of $210 billion. But this is under the title Ukraine, where they included funding American programs, and out of this assistance, Ukraine received to the best $27 billion, and through PDA channel, out of 33 billion, it's 25.3 billion, and through the budgetary channels, only 5%. So, and if this was said by Vladimir Zelensky and the others, then the correspondents of Associated Press would be reacting to these words completely differently. And the reaction of American media in the Congress and among the public would be completely different. And then they would be asking the question what Biden was doing, what Biden's administration was doing, how they were fooling, sorry for a non-parliamentary term, how they were fooling American public, American congressmen, American senators about how they were helping Ukraine.